so we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 91. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
Well, all right. So tonight we got a serial killer case for everybody.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, we haven't had a full-blown serial killer in a while actually I take that back, since we did BTK.
This is true.
And this one has some the problem with serial killers in general is there are a lot of similarities between them because, but this one, as I was researching it, really reminded me a lot of John Wayne Gacy, but for very different reasons. But the most thing is the way there are just so many victims and how he did certain things that just remind me of Gacy. So that's the kind of case.
Okay, well, no spoilers.
No, but I'm just saying that's the kind of thing it was.
Got you.
Okay, so are we ready?
Let's
ready to rock.
Okay. Today, in these days, we all know what grooming is. So,
yep.
In the 1960s and 70s, while it was certainly a thing, it wasn't really thought about that much. So, when the owner, a co-owner of a candy store, was giving away free candy to children, no one thought anything of it.
Although it seems like a fairly normal thing to do that most people wouldn't think anything of. Like, yeah, you give a little sample to the kid.
True, exactly. So no one thought anything of it. And when that same person was inviting teenagers to go to the back room to play pool inside that candy shop, no one thought anything of it. And then when teenage boys went missing at an alarming rate, police thought nothing of it because they were classifying them as Runaways, exactly. So at one point, a teenage boy who was in a sexual relationship with said co-candy owner walked in on this man in the act of raping another boy.
Oh, God.
The man offered the teenager a car in exchange for his silence, which he accepted.
What?
What the fuck?
Wow.
How is he going to explain where he got a free car?
Well, we'll get into all that.
Okay. My first thought, I'm like, okay, but how are you explaining that?
Well, you'll understand why there was no one really to ask him why he had a new car, but we'll get to it. So this is the case of Dean Corll, who is also known as the Candyman.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah, I hate when they give him names that are almost upbeat, And this has nothing to do with the horror movie. That has nothing to do with that. There are no bees involved. Or a hook. So Dean Corll was born on December 24th, 1939, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Now, his father was strict with the children, but his mother was very protective of her boys, because they basically would have two boys, and their marriage was marred by frequent quarreling, and the couple divorced in 1946, 4 years after giving birth to the younger of the two sons.
Damn, divorce in 1946? That's hard.
Yeah, that was probably really frowned upon. Yes.
Yeah, and hard to obtain, unless I assume at that time it must have been him who initiated it.
It's there's not enough information on that, so I don't know. But
this is just me rambling on the thought of the current events of some people wanting to end no fault divorce.
Oh yes, oh God, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yep. So the mother subsequently sold their family home and relocated to a trailer in Memphis, Tennessee, because their father was drafted into the Air Force, and even though they were divorced, she wanted them to remain in contact with their father, who was stationed now in Memphis. In a weird way, she was still trying to do right by both the father and her kids.
That's good of her.
Yeah. So Dean Corll was shy. He was also a serious child who rarely socialized with other children, but at the same time he displayed concern for the well-being of others. which is an amazing thing to lose as he becomes an adult.
Right.
Now, Corll's parents attempted a reconciliation, and they remarried in 1950, and they moved to Pasadena, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. However, that reconciliation was short-lived, and by 1953, the couple was once again divorced, with the mother retaining custody of her 2 sons.
My goodness.
I know, right? 2 divorces in a handful of years at a time when divorce wasn't really a thing.
Right, 2 divorces with the same person.
Right, which means like the people at the courthouse must have been like, "You're a fucking idiot for remarrying in the first place."
Literally.
Is there a third time?
Oh, just wait. Not to
God.
not to the same
Oh,
guy.
Mamma Mia.
Not to the same guy. So following the second divorce, Corll's mother married a traveling clock salesman named Jake West. I can't even imagine.
That just sounds like a fake
is that
job.
Good thing? Is that like a high prestige job? Like, what is that?
I have no idea. I just can't imagine someone knocking on my door and being like, "You want to buy this clock?"
Being like, would you like to see my selection of clocks?
It's like I'm picturing him having like those Flava Flav size clocks around his neck.
Shut up! No, that's so
Yes.
good. Oh, yes.
Yes.
It is. I'm picturing now Flava Flav. Okay.
So Corll's mother and stepfather started a small family candy company, initially operating out of their garage. And in the early days of the business, Corll worked day and night while still attending school. He and his younger brother were responsible for running the candy-making machines and packing the product, which their stepfather sold on his sales routes.
Damn, this is wacky. I mean, let's just start some candy making machines in my garage.
And sell them to the locals. Like, this only happens in, like, the 1950s, you know?
Yeah, this is a very deeply 1950s thing.
So shortly after graduating school, Corll and his family moved to the northern outskirts of Houston so that the family candy business could be closer to the city, which was a majority of the people who bought their product. In the early 1960s, Corll moved into an apartment above the candy shop. Now, Corll's mother divorced West in 1963 and opened a new candy business, which she named the Corll Candy Company. Fun with the alliteration on the C's there. Her eldest son, Dean, was appointed vice president of the new family firm, with his younger brother Stanley being appointed the secretary/treasurer. The same year, one of the teenage male employees of the Corll Candy Company complained to Corll's mother that her son had made sexual advances towards him.
Oh, already.
In response, she fired the teenage employee.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. We love it.
Yep. So you can see the difference between anything in the 1960s versus today. You know,
Oh, yeah. By
if
far.
that happened today, there'd be lawsuits and all sorts of scandals. Like, whatever. That company would be shut down so fast. At least up here. Maybe not in Texas. Though now that I'm saying it out loud, maybe I'm wrong about that. Corll was drafted into the U.S. Army on August 10th, 1964. However, he reportedly hated it, and he actually applied for a hardship discharge on the grounds that his family needed him home to run their business.
Wow.
A candy shop, right? And somehow, not only did the Army grant his request, he was given an honorable discharge after
What?
after only
I feel
10
like it was
months.
just easier to lie back then.
It must have been. But
Yeah, nobody looked into anything. They were just like, yep, okay.
But this is also the Vietnam era. You'd think it'd be
Right,
hard
so
to
it's
get
very
out.
hard to dodge.
Yeah, so what the fuck? And had they kept him in, maybe the rest of this wouldn't have fucking happened because he might have been killed in Vietnam. Just saying.
Right.
Because this is fucked up. I should give a trigger warning because this is going to discuss the sexual assault of teenage boys. So I should say that now. I probably should have said it earlier, but... Reportedly, Corll divulged to some of his close acquaintances after he was released from the Army that during his period of service, that 10 months, was when he realized that he was homosexual and had experienced his first homosexual encounters. So following his honorable discharge from the Army, Corll resumed his position as vice president of the candy company. And as had been the case in his teenage years, he increased the number of hours he devoted to the business to satisfy the increasing demand of the family's product. In 1965, the Corll Candy Company relocated to 22nd Street, which was directly across the street from an elementary school.
Oh no, I hate where this is going.
So Corll was known to give free candy to local children, in particular the boys. And as a result, he earned himself the nicknames the Pied Piper and the Candyman.
Pied Piper is really
Much
poignant, isn't
more
it?
apt, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
It's too bad that's not the one the news ran with, right?
I know. For real.
So the company employed a small workforce. He was seen to behave flirtatiously towards several of the teenage male employees.
Gross.
He also installed a pool table at the rear of the candy factory where employees and local youths would congregate. In 1967, Corll befriended a 12-year-old boy
Gross.
Oh, God.
named David Owen Brooks, who at the time was a sixth grader and one of many children that he gave free candy to. Now, Brooks initially became one of Corll's many youthful companions, regularly socializing with him and various other teenagers who would congregate at the factory. He also joined Corll on regular trips that Corll took to South Texas to go to the beach in the company of other teenagers.
Oh, that's really weird.
Brooks later commented that Corll was the first adult male who didn't mock him for his appearance. Now, I don't think he's
That's
that...
really fucking sad.
Yes, and
First of all.
I don't think Brooks is really that unattractive, but apparently people gave him a lot of shit.
People are so mean.
So whenever Brooks told Corll that he needed cash, Corll gave him money. And Brooks started to see Corll as a sort of father figure.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, this is even worse because this also reminds me of the family murders in Australia.
Oh, God, it gets that bad?
Some of it. So upon Corll's urging, a sexual relationship gradually developed between himself and Brooks. So beginning in 1969, when Brooks was 14,
Ugh.
Corll would pay Brooks in cash or with gifts to allow him to perform oral sex on him.
Oh, gross.
What?
By his own later admission, Brooks began regarding Corll's apartment as his second home.
Oh.
Around this time, Brooks dropped out of high school, and Corll's mother and half-sister moved to Colorado after the failure of her third marriage and the closure of the candy company, which ensued in June of 1968. So although so at this point in 1968, the candy company is now closed. Sorry, I skipped around a little bit there.
Gotcha.
So although
But he still has these pre-existing relationships with these young people.
Exactly. So although his mother often talked to him over the phone, she would never see him again.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So following the closure of the candy company, Corll took a job as an electrician at the Houston Lighting and Power Company, where he tested electrical relay systems. And this is the job he would have until his death. Now, Corll killed his first known victim, an 18-year-old college freshman named Jeffrey Conan, on September 25th, 1970.
Ugh.
I have to say that seems like a much older person than I thought it was going to be.
Yes, and the first time I ever heard about this case, I thought the same thing. I thought it was going to be children, not teenagers and young adults. But
Right, because that's who he's sexually assaulting.
Right. Well, I mean, when he first started sexually assaulting Brooks, he was 14, so he's still technically a teenager. I was picturing like 7, 8-year-olds, you know what I mean? But he's at least targeting teenagers, not children. Not that it's much better.
Right, but he's still giving candy to children, like he's grooming them. We don't know what if he's finding them when they're younger and grooming them and, you know, abusing them later.
Right, which is precisely why I started this off with a discussion about grooming. Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
So Jeffrey Conan vanished while hitchhiking with another student from the University of Texas to his parents' home in Houston. He was dropped off alone near the uptown area of Houston at approximately 6:15 p.m. It's likely that Corll offered Jeffrey a ride home, which he must have accepted. Jeffrey was sexually assaulted and died of asphyxiation caused by manual strangulation with a cloth gag in his mouth.
Oh.
His body would be found buried beneath a large boulder, covered with a layer of lime, wrapped in plastic, naked, bound hand and foot with nylon cord, at a place called High Island Beach.
Oh, so fucking awful.
Yeah. On December 13th, 1970, David Brooks, this 14-year-old accomplice, lured two other 14-year-old youths named James Glass and Danny Yates away from a religious rally to Corll's apartment.
Oh.
James was an acquaintance of Brooks who, at Brooks' behest, had actually previously visited Corll's address. Both boys were tied to opposite ends of a torture board that Corll had, and they were subsequently raped.
What the fuck is a torture board?
So this is similar to what Gacy used. It's basically a length of plywood, and he has handcuffs at one end and nylon ropes at the other, and he ties them to it so they can't move, and he tortures and assaults them.
That's really upsetting.
So at one point, David Brooks walked in on this and interrupted Corll in the act of assaulting these two boys.
Oh, and fucking did he do anything?
Corll promised Brooks a car in return for his silence. Brooks accepted the offer, and Corll later bought him a green Chevy Corvette.
Oh my God.
So Brooks' parents are kind of out of the picture here.
Right.
Yeah. So Corll later told Brooks that he had killed the two boys and offered him $200 for any boy Brooks could lure to his apartment.
Oh, that's fucked.
Now, keep in mind, in the 1960s, early 1970s, $200 is roughly $1,600 in today's money. Not that that would make it any more enticing, but it's a lot of money back then for a teenager.
No, yeah. Ugh.
Now, James and Danny, these two victims, were buried in a boat shed that Corll had rented. 6 weeks after this double murder, on January 30th, 1971, Brooks and Corll encountered two teenage brothers, Donald and Jerry Waldrop, walking towards their parents' home. The brothers had been driven to a friend's house by their father with plans to discuss forming a bowling league with their friends, and had begun walking home after they found out their friend wasn't home. Now, this is the 70s. I guess he could have called his house, but there's no cell phones.
But if his friend wasn't home and he couldn't get inside, then how is he calling his house?
No, I meant like they could have called his friend's house and been like, if nobody answered, you don't go. You know what I mean? You don't make the trip initially.
Before you even leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So both boys were enticed into Corll's van, where they were raped, strangled, and subsequently buried in the boat shed.
So Brooks knows that he's murdering all these people, right?
Brooks is 100% an accomplice in this, yes.
Fucked up.
So between March and May of 1971, Corll abducted and killed 3 victims, all of whom lived in the Houston Heights area, and all of whom were buried towards the rear end of that boat shed. In these abductions, Brooke is known to have been a participant. Of these 3 victims, there was 15-year-old Randall Harvey, who was last seen by his family on the afternoon of March 9th, riding his bike towards Oak Forest, where he worked part-time as a gas station attendant. Randall was driven to Corll's apartment, where he was subsequently killed by a single gunshot to the head.
Oh my God, he's moving to guns?
Yeah, he mixes it up quite a bit. So the other 2 victims were 13-year-old David Hillegeist and 16-year-old Gregory Winkle, who were abducted and killed together on the afternoon of May 29, 1971. As had been the case with the parents of the other victims of Corll, both of these parents launched a frantic search for their sons. One of the young kids that volunteered to distribute missing posters and reward posters for any information, so to speak, was a friend of Brooks, a 15-year-old kid named Elmer Wayne Henley, who is often known as Wayne. Now, put that name in your back pocket for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
On August 17, 1971, Corll and Brooks encountered a 17-year-old acquaintance of Brooks named Reuben Hanley walking home from the movie theater. Brooks persuaded Reuben to attend a party. Reuben agreed and was taken to Corll's home, where he was subsequently strangled and buried in the boat shed.
Damn, how big is this fucking boat shed? What the fuck?
I know, right? It must be. Well, I mean, a boat is pretty big. You know, it's not. I'm assuming
That's
it
a good
stores
point,
a boat.
but also is he digging out the ground of this boat shed? How do you bury someone in a boat shed?
My guess is he's digging out the ground. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm asking too many questions about the wrong things, but
No,
I
but
can't picture it.
no, because I initially thought I pictured a shed that you stored material for boats. Not an actual boat, but if there's like if he's hiding this, I don't think he actually has a boat in there. I think he's just
Well,
renting.
definitely no boat in the boat shed.
That wouldn't make any sense.
That would make no sense. No way.
Brooks later stated that he assisted Corll in the abduction and murder of two other young kids following Reuben's murder. In his confession, Brooks stated that one of these boys was actually kept alive for 4 days before he was murdered.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
The identity of these victims remain unknown.
Wow.
So in the winter of 1971, Brooks introduced Elmer Wayne Henley to Corll. This is the name I told you to put in your back pocket.
yeah, the kid who
Yep,
was
gotcha.
spreading the missing posters.
Yes. Henley was likely lured to Corll's to be the next intended victim. However, Corll evidently decided the youth would make a good accomplice and started offering him the same fee of $200 for any boy he could lure to his apartment.
Where's he getting all his money from?
He works as an electrician, so
Oh, okay, he makes good money.
yeah. So he
And just spends it all on this.
on this, right? It's crazy.
Ugh, fucking disgusting.
So he informed Henley, the new accomplice here, that he was involved in a white slavery ring operating out of Dallas.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what he's telling this kid. He wants young boys so he can sell them into white slavery in Dallas.
Hey, why does he think that's a better excuse?
I don't know.
Like what?
I have no idea.
Oh, I, I guess it's slightly better than murder,
I guess,
but like, what?
You got me, I don't
Oh,
think
you really threw me a real.
I don't
That came out of left field.
I don't think like these people, so it's really tough.
So yeah.
So Henley later stated that for several months he ignored Corll's offer, although he did maintain an acquaintance with him and gradually began to view Corll as something of a brother-type person.
Who puts
Who sells people
young
into
boys
slavery.
into white slavery?
So in early 1972, Henley decided to accept Corll's offer because he and his family were in a dire financial situation.
Ugh.
Henley said the first abduction he participated in occurred on February 19th, 1972. In the statement Henley would later give to police following his arrest, he stated that he and Corll picked up, quote, a boy and lured him to Corll's home on the promise of smoking some marijuana with a group of them. At Corll's residence, using a ruse he and Corll had prepared, Henley cuffed his own hands behind his back, and he freed himself with a hidden key that was in his back pocket. They then duped the youth into donning the handcuffs himself before Corll bound and gagged him. Just like John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, I was gonna say yeah,
Yep.
exactly the same.
Henley then left, and the youth was alone with Corll, and Henley believed that he was going to be sold into sexual slavery.
Into sexual slavery.
Yes.
I don't know if that would be any better than what's about to come.
Well, the identity of this victim remains unknown. Even though Henley assisted in the end, they still couldn't identify this kid or find his remains.
Oh, that's sad.
1 month later, on March 24th, 1972, Henley, Brooks, and Corll encountered an 18-year-old acquaintance of Henley named Frank Aguirre leaving a restaurant where he worked. Henley called Frank over to Corll's van, and they invited him back to drink some beer and smoke some marijuana, and off they went.
Ugh.
Inside Corll's home, Frank smoked some of that devil's lettuce, and before long, he picked up a pair of handcuffs that was sitting on the table. In response, Corll pounced on Frank and pushed him into the table and handcuffed his hands behind his back.
Oh, Jesus.
Henley claimed later that he had not known of Corll's true intentions towards Frank, and he tried to persuade him not to assault or do anything else to him.
Interesting. So it's like, oh, like, he thought that it was just like, oh, well, if it's my friend, then we can just smoke weed and it'll be chill.
Exactly.
But if it's a random person, then, oh, it's fine.
Exactly. Now, Corll refused and informed Henley that he had raped, tortured, and killed the other person that he had brought to him, and that he intended to do the same to Frank. Yeah.
Fuck?
Henley subsequently assisted Corll and Brooks in burying Frank at the High Island beach.
Whoa.
Oh, God.
Now, despite this revelation that Corll was, in reality, killing these boys, Henley nonetheless became an active participant in the abductions and the murders.
Oh, come on now.
That's why it reminds me of the family killings. Like, it's crazy that a group of people come together like this. It's like Snowtown as well.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
fucking crazy. So 1 month later, on April 20th, Henley assisted Corll and Brooks in the abduction of another boy, 17-year-old Mark Scott. Mark, who was well known to both Henley and Brooks, was grabbed by force, and he fought furiously against their attempts to restrain him, even attempting to stab his attackers with a knife.
Good for
Oh,
him.
shit.
However, Mark looked up and saw Henley pointing a gun at him, and he just gave up.
Oh,
Mark
yeah,
was...
that's all you can do.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. Although I would have kept resisting and let them kill me by gunshot, then just because you don't know what else is going to come, you know? But Mark
You
was...
think that until you're in fight, flight, freeze.
That's true. You're right. It's easy to say that now while I'm sitting here calmly in a chair with a microphone, right?
Exactly, because the freeze instinct comes in because that would be technically the better thing to do in that situation because you could maybe escape later or you could,
That's true. However, Mark was tied to the torture board and suffered the same fate as Frank: rape, torture, strangulation, and burial at High Island Beach.
Now, how big is this beach? Like, how are they able to bury so many freaking people?
Well, my guess is it has to, because like most state parks, I'm sure it's like something like that. There's a beach. I don't think they're burying them on the sand proper,
Right, no.
right at the edge of the lake. I think it's just in the woods nearby. It's not like they're digging for treasure. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, just because, like, if you see these mounds all over the place, wouldn't somebody start to question something?
Yeah, you would hope so. Yes. So Brooks later stated Henley was especially sadistic in his participation in the murders. And Henley later admitted to gradually becoming fascinated with how much stamina people had. He enjoys how long they suffer and how much they can take before they die. So somehow
he's not just a participant, he is fucking enjoying it.
Yeah, he's a sadistic fuck just like the other two.
Ugh.
So on June 26, Henley assisted Corll and Brooks in the abduction and murder of two other boys named Billy Balch and Johnny DeLome. In Brooks' confession, he stated that both youths were tied to Corll's bed, and after their torture and rape, Henley manually strangled Billy, then shouted, "Hey, Johnny," and shot Johnny in the forehead. And
Oh, God.
And the bullet had exited through near Johnny's ear. Amazingly, this didn't kill Johnny.
What?
Whoa.
And
Wow.
Johnny pleaded with Henley, saying, "Wayne, please don't," before he was strangled.
Oh, wow. That escalated quickly.
And
That's harrowing.
It's fucked up. I would have played dead. But
Jeez.
again, it's easy to say from my chair.
Exactly. Well, honestly, that might have been a response because that's part of
Yes.
Here I am. I'm talking about fight, flight, freeze today. That's why the freeze response exists, because sometimes playing dead is how you survive. It evolutionarily.
Yes. No, you're right. You was it fawn? No, not
Yep,
fawn.
that's another one too.
No, it's
They talk about fight, flight,
freeze. Yeah,
freeze, fawn, which is all. You're right. Fawn is also one.
Yep. Fuck. That's so crazy. So at this time, Corll had moved to a different place, and the trio lured a 19-year-old named William Redinger to their house. William was tied to the plywood torture board, tortured, and abused by Corll. Brooks later claimed he persuaded Corll to allow William to be released, and he was allowed to leave.
Why?
I don't know. And the crazy part is this kid didn't say anything.
Yeah, how do you not say a word? Like,
He
oh
let-
my
Oh, the
God.
shame.
The shame
Time
of being-
to say that you were raped by a man.
Yeah, you would never, you wouldn't, not back then. I don't
You
even,
would be treated the same way that a homosexual person would have been treated, which is horrible.
Exactly.
And even
Yep.
Like, how hard is it for men even today to report being sexually assaulted because of the stigma? It's
Exactly.
so fucked up. And this is 50 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, it just wouldn't happen,
Yeah.
which sucks because they could have stopped everything that's going to happen.
Oh no, you're telling me there's a lot more, aren't you?
Yes. There's a
Oh
lot
no.
more. So on another occasion, Henley knocked Brooks unconscious as he entered the house.
The fuck?
Yeah. Corll then tied Brooks to his bed and assaulted him repeatedly before releasing him.
What the fuck?
Yep.
What is he, a whipping boy?
He basically just decided that was that. He was going to have him, however, I mean, they were already involved in a sexual relationship before, but apparently they just decided for some reason he was getting it that time. Now,
Ugh.
so despite the assault, Brooks continued to assist Corll in the abduction of more victims.
The Stockholm syndrome is real.
You took it right out of my mouth. I was just about to say it.
So Corll's next victim was 17-year-old Stephen Sickman, who was last seen leaving a party shortly before midnight on July 19th. The boy was savagely bludgeoned about the chest with a blunt instrument before he was strangled and buried in the boat shed.
Ugh.
Approximately 1 month later, on or about August 21st, 19-year-old Roy Bunton was abducted while walking to his job as an assistant of a shoe store. Roy was gagged with a section of Turkish towel in his mouth, and he was bound with adhesive tape.
Ugh.
He was shot twice in the head and buried in the boat shed.
Again, there's getting to be a lot of people in this boat shed.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I mean. It has to be pretty big.
Remind me again, it's reminding me also of which one of it was the one that had them all under his house.
Gacy.
Oh, that was Gacy. Yeah. It's
That was
literally
Gacy.
Yeah. So
it's so Gacy coded.
Yes, that's what I mean.
It's mirrored.
It very much reminded me of Gacy, yeah. So on October 3rd, 1972, Henley and Brooks encountered two teenagers, Wally Simoneau and Richard Hembry, walking to Hembry's home. Wally and Richard were enticed into Brooks' Corvette and driven to Corll's apartment. That evening, Wally is known to have phoned his mother's house and have shouted the word "mama" into the receiver before the connection was terminated.
Oh no.
That following morning, Richard was accidentally shot in the mouth by Henley, with the bullet exiting through his neck.
Oh.
So I can only imagine they were torturing these poor kids and stuck a gun in his fucking mouth and it went off.
Ugh.
Several hours later, both of these boys were strangled to death.
Oh my god, he had to live with a fucking bullet hole through his mouth and throat.
For hours.
Ugh.
And they were both subsequently buried in a common grave inside the boathouse, the boat shed. Sometime in
graveyard.
Yeah, basically at this point it's a graveyard, right?
Yeah.
Sometime in November of 1972, 18-year-old Willard Branch, an Oak Forest boy known to both Corll and Henley, disappeared while hitchhiking from Mount Pleasant to Houston.
A lot of people going missing.
And the police did nothing. Nothing.
Shock.
Runaways.
Willard's gagged and emaciated body was found buried in the boat shed. On November 15th, 19-year-old Richard Kepner disappeared on his way to a phone booth, and his body was found strangled at High Island Beach.
Oh.
Altogether, at least 10 teenagers between the ages of 13 and 19 were murdered between March and November of 1972, 5 of whom were buried at High Island Beach and 5 inside the boat shed.
Ugh.
In February of 1973, Corll killed 17-year-old Joseph Lyle. Joseph was known to both Corll and Brooks. He actually lived on the same street that Brooks did.
Wow, that's messy.
Yeah, you'd think that this would start adding up to somebody.
To somebody, but I'm guessing it doesn't.
This is how crazy this case is. So, strangely, no known victims were killed between February 1st and June 4th of 1973. Now,
Wow, that's a nice little span.
Now, Corll is known to have suffered from hydrocele in early 1973, which may have contributed to his period of inactivity.
What is hydrocele?
Hydrocele is a painless swelling in the scrotum caused by the buildup of fluid around the testicles.
So he
Hilarious.
can't. So he's having a hard time raping because
Because
his
his
testicles
balls
are
are
swollen.
swollen. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
That's twisted.
uh, he definitely deserved that.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
well,
but
it says
least
it's
that.
painless, so he deserved way worse.
Yeah, he does. He deserved much worse. Syphilis or something.
Yeah, he
Or the
deserved a painful swelling of the scrotum.
yeah, gonorrhea something.
Yeah.
So in addition, around the time of Joseph Lyle's murder, Henley had actually temporarily moved away in an apparent effort to distance himself from Corll. Those two things are basically what's believed to have been responsible for this lull in killings. Nevertheless, from June forward, Corll's rate of killings increased dramatically, and both Henley and Brooks later testified that it also increased the level of brutality for these murders.
Oof, as it always does.
Henley later compared Corll's escalation to being, quote, like a bloodlust, adding that he and Brooks would instinctively know when Corll was about to announce that he needed a new boy due to the fact that he would appear restless, smoking a lot of cigarettes, and making reflex movements.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So this is an addict is what you have here.
Yeah, literally addicted to killing. This is crazy.
It's fucking
and that's bad
nuts.
that they can just notice the signs right away. They're like, ah, crap, he's starting to smoke again.
Yep. Fuck that. So on June 4th, Henley and Corll abducted 15-year-old William Lawrence, and the boy was last seen alive by his father on 31st Street. After 3 days of abuse and torture, Lawrence was strangled before being buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. So they have a new burial ground.
Oh.
Less than 2 weeks later, 20-year-old Raymond Blackburn was abducted, strangled, and also buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. On July 6, 1973, Henley began attending classes at the coach's driving school in Bel Air, where he became acquainted with 15-year-old Homer Luis Garcia.
Oh no, he's just like networking.
Yep. The following day, Garcia telephoned his mother to say he was spending the night with a friend. He was shot and left to bleed to death in Corll's bathtub before being buried at Lake Sam Rayburn.
Holy hell.
It just keeps escalating.
Right, it keeps escalating. And it's interesting that it feels like the MO is changing.
Yeah, a little bit at a time, yes. I think they get bored with the same process, so they change it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has to escalate because that's how addictions work.
Yep. 5 days later, on July 12th...
Oh my God, 5 days later!
17-year-old John Sellers was bound, shot to death, and buried at High Island Beach. So they are still using the beach there. In July of 1973, after Brooks married his pregnant fiancée...
Oh, God, this is not
good. Oh,
good.
my God.
Henley became temporarily the only procurer of victims assisting Corll.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So
sure he's not happy about that.
He helped in 3 abductions between July 19th and July 25th, and Henley claims that this was the only time that Brooks was not a participant in any of it.
So like over the course of a week?
No, over the course of the years they've been doing this, according to Henley.
No, I mean like this 1 week is the time he wasn't helping.
Correct, yes. So one of those 3 victims was 15-year-old Michael Balch, who was the brother of Corll's previous victim, Billy Balch.
Oh,
That's
God.
so fucked up.
Yeah, they killed 2 kids from the same fucking family.
Those parents, oh.
And Michael Balch.
Well, he killed brothers earlier, wasn't he? Didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, you're right. But still, it's so fucked up.
And like the family knows they've lost one, and then they lose another.
And they don't even. It's not like they found the bodies. They think they're runaways, or the police are convincing them they're runaways. So they have one kid who they think runs away, and then sometime later, their second kid just disappears. And Michael Balch was strangled and buried at Sam Lake Rayburn. Not that that's much of a surprise. The other 2 victims during that time period was Charles Cobble and Marty Ray Jones, and they were both abducted together on the afternoon of July 25th. Henley himself later buried both of their bodies in the boat shed. So on
This boat shed, I can't.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to make sure I look it up and post a picture of this if
Because
there's one out
I
there.
can't even. Yeah.
Which is funny because now I'm hoping it's big. If it's really small, I'm like, how are they getting all these bodies in there?
Then we'll have more questions. We'll have follow-up questions.
It's like it's like a clown car, which really should have been for Gacy because he was the clown.
Literally.
Oh God, that's fucked.
That's terrible. So on August 3rd, 1973, Corll killed a 13-year-old boy from South Houston named James Draymala. James was abducted by Brooks and Corll while riding his bike in Pasadena and driven to Lamar Drive under the pretense of collecting empty glass bottles to turn in for recycling.
Oh my God.
At Corll's home, James was tied to Corll's torture board, raped, tortured, and strangled with a cord before being buried in the boat shed.
It just doesn't fucking stop, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't stop until one dramatic moment.
Are we anywhere close to that?
We're getting there. We're getting there. I promise.
Oh my God. This is brutal.
Brooks later described James as a small blonde boy for whom he had bought pizza and whose company he had spent 45 minutes with before he was attacked.
Oh.
On the evening of August 7th, 1973, Henley, who at this point, this is the third accomplice. He's only 17 at this point. Okay? He invited
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is all happening in such a short period of time. It's crazy.
Yes. So Henley invited his 20-year-old friend Timothy Curley to attend a party at Corll's Pasadena residence.
He's inviting his friends to get murdered?
Yep. Now, Timothy was a casual acquaintance of Corll, and it's very much possible that he was intended to be the next victim, and he accepted the offer and went over. Henley and Timothy arrived at Corll's house, where they sniffed paint fumes and drank alcohol until midnight before they left the house, promising to return shortly. So Corll actually let these two leave. Now, Henley and Timothy drove back to Houston Heights, and Timothy parked his vehicle close to Henley's home. The two exited the vehicle because they heard a commotion from across the street, and at this point, a 15-year-old girl named Rhonda Williams walked out of her home and towards them. Rhonda, who was a friend of theirs, was nursing a sprained ankle and had been beaten by her drunken father that evening.
Oh.
And she had accepted Henley's invitation to join him and Timothy at Corll's home.
Oh God, no.
That's
also like, what the hell's going to happen then?
You'll see. We're getting there. At approximately 3 a.m. that morning, on August 8th, 1973, Henley and Timothy, accompanied by Rhonda, returned to Corll's home. Corll was furious at Henley because he had brought a girl into his house, telling him in private that he had ruined everything.
Oof.
Henley explained...
He's gonna pay for that big time.
Henley explained that Rhonda had argued with her father that evening and she didn't want to return home. Corll appeared to calm down and offered the trio beer and marijuana. The three teenagers began drinking and smoking, with Henley and Timothy sniffing some paint fumes, which I don't really get, but okay. I know it makes you dizzy and your head light, but it's still fucking weird, right? But
yeah, it's not my favorite.
Yeah, and the whole time they're doing it, Corll was watching them intently. After approximately 2 hours, Henley, Timothy, and Rhonda all passed out. Henley awoke to find himself lying on his stomach with Corll snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. His mouth had been taped shut and his ankles had been bound together.
Oh, yeah, he's about to get punished for bringing a girl.
Timothy and Rhonda lay beside Henley, securely bound with nylon rope, gagged with adhesive tape, and lying face down on the floor. Timothy had been stripped naked.
Oh.
Noting Henley had awoken, Corll removed the gag from his mouth. Henley protested in vain against Corll's actions, whereupon Corll reiterated that he was angry with him for bringing a girl into his home and that he intended to kill all three after he assaulted and tortured Timothy, initially saying, "Man, you blew it by bringing that girl," before shouting, "I'm going to kill you all, but first I'm going to have my fun."
Ew.
He then repeatedly kicked Rhonda in the chest before lifting Henley to his feet, dragging him into the kitchen, and placing a .22 caliber pistol against his stomach, threatening to shoot him.
Oh, this poor girl was trying to escape abuse.
And found herself in the worst possible situation imaginable.
Yeah, awful.
Henley managed to calm Corll, promising to participate in the torture and murder of both Rhonda and Timothy if Corll released him. After approximately 30 minutes of discussion, Corll agreed and untied Henley.
Imagine hearing this from the next room. Jesus Christ.
Fucking crazy,
That
right?
must have been the longest 30 minutes of his life.
They then carried Timothy and Rhonda into the bedroom and tied them to opposite sides of the torture board. Timothy on his stomach, Rhonda on her back. He then informed Timothy of his intentions to look up his anus. Yes.
Ew, what the fuck?
And then Henley began inhaling paint fumes from a paper bag, probably to calm his nerves, I guess. I don't fucking know.
At that point, I would hope so. I mean, you need all the calming you can get when you're stuck in that situation.
I don't think that calms you.
I have no idea.
But I don't know.
So Corll then handed Henley a hunting knife and ordered him to cut away Rhonda's clothes, insisting that while he would rape and kill Timothy, Henley would do the same to Rhonda.
Oh.
Henley began cutting away Rhonda's clothes as Corll undressed himself and began to assault and torture Timothy.
Oh.
Timothy began writhing and shouting as Rhonda, whose gag Henley had removed, lifted her head and asked Henley, "Is this for real?" To which Henley answered, Yeah, can you imagine? Coming to, and that's the situation you're in?
Yeah, and just like,
To which Henley responded to her, yes. Rhonda then asked Henley, "Are you going to do anything about it?" Henley then asked Corll whether he might take Rhonda into another room. Corll ignored him, and Henley grabbed Corll's pistol, shouting, "You've gone far enough, Dean." As Corll clambered off Timothy, Henley elaborated, "I can't go on any longer. I can't have you kill all my friends." Corll approached Henley, saying, "Kill me, Wayne." Henley stepped back a few paces as Corll continued to advance upon him, shouting, "You won't do it." Henley then fired at Corll, hitting him in the forehead.
Oh.
The bullet failed to penetrate Corll's skull. And
shit.
But what, from like literally point blank? What?
But a .22 is a very small weapon. It's not that powerful.
Yeah.
Even though it should have, it didn't, which is crazy.
That is nuts.
Corll continued to lurch towards Henley, whereupon Henley fired 2 more rounds, hitting Corll in the left shoulder. Corll then ran out of the room, hitting the wall of the hallway. Henley fired 3 additional bullets into his back and shoulders as Corll slid down the wall in the hallway outside the room where the other 2 teenagers were still bound. Corll died where he fell, naked and facing the wall.
Oh my God.
Fucking crazy. Henley would recall that immediately after he shot Corll, the sole thought in his mind was that Corll would have been proud of the way he behaved during the confrontation, adding that Corll had trained him to react quickly and forcefully, and this was exactly what he had done. Like, how fucked up is that?
That's insane. But it is, yeah, he trained his own killer, didn't he?
Yeah, that's so true. It's so fucked up. After Henley shot Corll, he and Timothy began weeping as Timothy repeatedly thanked him for saving his life. Henley then released Timothy and Rhonda from the torture board, and all 3 teenagers dressed and discussed what to do next. Henley suggested that Timothy and Rhonda should just simply leave, to which Timothy replied, "No, we should call the police."
Valid, correct.
Henley agreed and looked up the phone number for the Pasadena Police Department in Corll's telephone directory. Now, it's entirely possible that this part of the country did not have 911 active in the 70s, because that started in the 60s and hadn't fully taken root. It took a while to fully take root across the country.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so you had to actually know the police's phone number.
Wow.
At 8:24 a.m. on August 8th, 1973, Henley placed the call to the Pasadena Police Department. His call was answered by an operator named Velma Lines. In his call, Henry blurted to the operator, Y'all better come here right now. I just killed a man.
Oh my God.
Minutes later, the patrol car arrived, and the 3 teenagers were sitting on the porch outside the house, and the officer noted the .22 caliber pistol on the driveway near them. Henley told the officer that he was the individual who had made the call and indicated that Corll's body was inside the house. After confiscating the pistol and placing Henley, Rhonda, and Timothy inside the patrol car, the officers entered the house and discovered Corll's body in the hallway. The officer returned to the car and read Henley his Miranda rights. In response, Henley shouted, "I don't care who knows about it. I have to get it off my chest." Timothy later...
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, good for him, but he technically almost could have gotten away with everything and he just played this right. But we're glad he didn't, because he doesn't deserve to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
Timothy later told detectives that before the police officer had arrived, Henley had informed him, "If you weren't my friend, I would have gotten $200 for you."
Holy hell, that's dark.
Yeah. Can you imagine? This?
No.
Like, this is what I did for $200. This is what I did to other people. But you're my buddy, so... I honestly think what changed everything was the girl.
Yeah, he was actually asked to assault someone.
Yes, and the girl, just the whole idea of her looking at you and saying, "Is this for real?" Like, that's...
Yeah, that really makes you confront.
Yeah, like, at that point, you're like, fuck, this is real life.
Right, it brings it into a reality. Like, you're just going through the motions before, but now when somebody actually acknowledges it...
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. So while in custody, Henley was initially questioned about the killing of Corll. He recounted the events of the previous evening and explained that he had shot Corll in self-defense. Statements given by Timothy and Rhonda corroborated that account, and detectives questioning Henley believed that this was indeed self-defense. When questioned regarding his claim that Corll had threatened him that morning and that he had shouted that he had killed several boys, Henley explained that for almost 3 years, himself and Brooks had helped procure teenage boys for Corll to murder. Police initially didn't believe him, assuming that everything was just Corll's death. It wasn't until Henley started recalling victims' names that police started to put 2 and 2 together that all these missing boys, these runaways, were in fact victims of these 3 men. So Henley agreed to accompany police to Corll's boat shed, and they soon uncovered the body of a blonde-haired teenage boy lying on his side, encased in clear plastic and buried beneath a layer of lime. Police continued excavating through the earth of the shed, unearthing the remains of more and more victims at varying stages of decomposition. Most of the bodies were found wrapped in a thick, clear plastic sheeting. All of them had been found to have been sodomized, and most victims bore evidence of sexual torture, including having their pubic hairs torn out, their genitals chewed, objects inserted into their rectums, and glass rods that had been inserted into their urethra and smashed.
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh, God.
And smashed?
And smashed.
Oh, that's unbelievable. Like, we were talking about torture, but oh, man, I wasn't picturing that.
That's torture.
That's fucked up.
Oh, my God.
And now I'm like, you'd imagine that you can't even kill yourself at that point because you're bound.
No.
Cloth rags had also been inserted into the victims' mouths, and adhesive tapes wound around their faces to muffle their screams. The tongue of the first victim uncovered protruded over 1 inch beyond the tooth margin.
Oh.
The mouth of another victim that was unearthed on August 8th was so agape that all of the upper and lower teeth were visible, leading investigators to theorize that this youth had died screaming. Yeah.
Oh.
Now, accompanied by his father, David Brooks presented himself to the Houston Police Department on the evening of August 8th and gave a statement in which he denied participation in any of the murders.
Really?
Yep. The next
Wow.
The next
what
morning,
a sick fuck.
I mean, what else are you going to do? You either admit to it or you try to get away with it, right? You don't have too many options.
True.
On the morning of August 9th, Henley gave a written statement detailing his and Brooks' involvement with Corll in the abduction and murder of all these kids. In his confession, Henley readily admitted to having personally killed approximately 9 boys and having assisted Corll in strangulation of others. Brooks gave a confession on the evening of the 9th, although he continued to deny any direct participation in the murders. He stated that once the victims were on the torture board, they were as good as dead. Brooks and Henley agreed to accompany police to assist in the search of the bodies of more victims. At the time, the killing spree was the worst case of serial murder in terms of the number of victims in the United States. This macabre record number of known victims attributed to a single murder case set by Corll was only surpassed in 1978 when they arrested John Wayne Gacy.
Wow.
It's crazy that these two basically operated around the same time.
Yeah, this is just a horrific time.
Families of Corll's victims were highly critical of the Houston PD, which they had been, obviously the police had been too quick to list the boys as runaways, and failed to see the pattern of disappearances of teenage boys from the Heights area. Bail for both Henley and Brooks was set at $100,000 each.
Holy crap.
Wow, that's a lot then.
Yeah, exactly. Henley was not charged with the death of Corll, which prosecutors ruled that had been committed in self-defense, which clearly, and to be honest, he did society a favor. Henley and Brooks were both tried separately for their roles in the murder. The jury deliberated for 92 minutes before finding Henley guilty of 6 murders for which he was tried. On July 16th, the judge ordered that Henley serve each 99-year sentence consecutively, which totaled 594 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's a fucking appropriate. Stay in there fucking forever.
Right. I mean, that's just amazing. Like, they should do this more often.
Absolutely.
Right? Henley appealed his sentence and even had a retrial, but the results were exactly the same. Now, Brooks was brought to trial in February of 1975, and it lasted less than a week. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes before reaching a guilty verdict and sentenced him to life in prison. Henley is serving his life sentence at Mark Stiles Unit in Jefferson County, Texas, and successive parole applications dating back from July of 1980 have been denied. His next eligible date of parole is in October of 2025.
And he ain't getting it.
No, he's not getting out.
There's no way in hell.
Now, Brooks served his life sentence at Terrell Unit near Rocheron, Texas. He died of COVID-19 related complications at a Galveston hospital on May 28th, 2020 at the age of 65. And
honestly,
good.
That kind of slays.
Yeah, good.
I hope he suffered. I hope he got intubated.
Right? Yeah, because that's early on too. May of 2020.
Yeah, that's early days.
Yeah, he probably suffered. Good.
But honestly, I hate that he wasted a spot in the hospital that could have gone to someone who deserved to live.
Agreed.
Maybe that's harsh, but...
No, I agree with you. I mean, he didn't... Like, someone else might have been saved that died because this guy took up a space, even though he himself died.
Yeah.
So Corll and his accomplices are known to have killed a minimum of 28 teenagers and young men between September of 1970 and August of 1973. It is suspected that their true number could be much higher. As Corll was killed immediately prior to his murders being discovered, the true number of their victims will never be known. And that is the case of Dean Corll.
Well, that was fucking
messed up guy.
Nuts. Yeah, that was
brutal.
He serially killed, that's for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's crazy because, like, how do they... I mean, I understand Houston's a big city, but how do you not recognize the pattern?
Yeah, and just like it feels like they were in the same area, around the same age, and there's so many of them.
And they're
Right,
friends.
that's the thing, is if it was 1 or 2 runaways or, whatever they saw it as, then yeah, no big deal. But that many?
Yeah, and a lot of them were friends of 2 of the killers. How is no one putting this together?
Friends. Yeah, it doesn't make it, like, no one's even questioning this. It's so weird.
Like, hey, the last time I saw them, they were with this guy. Like, no one puts that together. It's crazy. But
yeah,
that I'm just blown away by the ineptitude of police to put together, or they just don't give a fuck.
They just don't give a fuck.
That's what it breaks down to. And these are, I mean, most of the victims are white, so it's not even, we can't even play the race card and say, well, maybe they're because they were racist. No, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it was just that they didn't fucking care.
Yep, they had too much else to do in the city of Houston.
Yeah.
Well,
Ugh.
yeah.
It's a
Well, all
shame.
right. Well, all right. Thank you guys for joining us once again. We will see you again soon. I am Janus Dead,
I'm Jameson dead.
And I'm Joyous dead.
and we'll see you next week.
Bye.